Hello lovelies, how are you all doing today? I hope you're well. It's really windy again today. I don't know how far we're going to get. The other thing is, when was it? Last time I was here 3, 4, 5 days ago, I took nets off because we've got no cabbage whites left. But oh my goodness, we've had so much wind. My poor brassicas are battered. They're all... I don't know what to prioritise today. I feel like I need to get out there and stake them all because brassicas really hate wind rock. Anyway, before I do that, new garden stool has arrived. Sorry, noisy for a second. Oh, and it comes with a sort of little pocket. Pop your tools in. It's Velcro there, so I guess put it over the sort of the arm, as it were, of the stool. And then I don't know how much I'll use that because, to be honest, I kind of all my bits and bobs and tools, I generally carry them out in a trug. You know, that's only going to fit a couple of little tools, isn't it? Whereas when I go out in the garden, I've quite often got my secateurs, maybe a pair of scissors, string, my Hori Hori knife, little bits of cane. Anyway, right, how does this... I'm assuming it just unfolds. Oh yeah, oh I see. And then, good. Yay! I'm back in business with a little stool. I never use it that way up as a kneeler. I just find kneeling way too painful. But, you know, it's funny, until that other one broke, I hadn't realised how much I use it. Yeah, you know, because it just sits in the shed. I spend a lot of the time actually on the ground, right on the floor, quite often with a sheet of cardboard under my bum if it's a bit damp. But yeah, since it broke, which was what, a week and a bit, 10 days or so ago, 2 weeks maybe, I don't know, lost track of time. I suddenly was a bit sort of like, oh, I really need my garden stool. So yay, chuffed to have a garden stool again. Now, what's on the agenda for today? I'm supposed to be getting my garlic and broad beans in. I'm sort of not feeling it today. I don't know if you ever get that. I was singing it as I was walking down here just now. We might have to go in the shed because of this wind. Let's just quickly pop in the shed. Change of plan. I thought, you know what, I'm down here. Let's go and think about doing this garlic and broad beans. I just took the camera out there now and did a little bit of a sound test. Can you hear Rusty purring? Anyway, no, it's useless. There was way too much wind. I was thinking, oh, you know, because I was kind of, oh, bless you. I was kind of slightly not feeling it today anyway. Seeing me cabbages and stuff battered. But all is not lost, because frankly, at this time of year, I could do with getting to the shed every single day anyway, to just take home a fair ball body, to take home another lot of produce. There's no room, it's crazy. So that's good, I'll take some produce home. And I brought my garden stool down, great. And then I suddenly thought, oh, I know. Why don't we do what I was talking about last week or the week before? I was doing it slightly in the reverse order that I was planning to do. Let's talk about all my tools and kit and everything I use to create my garden each year. I was going to talk about all my big tools first and then move on to sort of hand tools and accessories. However, there's no space for the big tools in here. I just thought there's things over there I want to show you. So we'll do little stuff as far as is possible. You're about to wobble, I think, because Rusty's... Are you jumping? Oh, no, you're going to stay, are you? Of course, the most important accessory for any shed is a little cat bowl, isn't it? Okay, so, yes, we'll ignore all the big tools for now, and we'll start with the little tools. And some of them I'm going to have to just explain rather than show you, because some things are tucked away. It's that time of year. So, let's start off with my... I need to grab something. Hang on a tick. This would be so much easier to do if I wasn't surrounded by produce and kitty cats. Right, let's get on. So, my go-to hand tools. You've seen them before. My Felco Secateurs. Rarely out of my hands. Obviously at this time of year I'm using them. Every time I'm in the garden I'm using them to chop down old dying plant matter. Chop. Just helps it to compost more quickly. Years ago I used to be really lazy with my compost and I didn't chop anything, I just shoved it in the bin, compost bin, and hoped for the best. But these days, yeah, I chop things up. It just helps it compost more quickly, and also it means I can mix things a bit more thoroughly, my greens and my browns. So I absolutely wouldn't be without them. And as I mentioned the other day, one of the reasons to do this video now is for any of you that are thinking, oh, what bits of kit am I missing? What do I need? If we talk about it now, then you've got a chance of putting it on your Christmas wish list if you're the kind of family that does gifting. Because, yeah, they are expensive. They start at about £35. They're going to last you for life, though. They're going to absolutely last you forever. As I was saying the other day, all the parts are replaceable. You can clean and sharpen them yourselves. So, although it's a huge chunk of money up front, well worth it. Especially if a group of friends or family all chip in and get them for you. Then, oh, it's a bit muddy. My other absolute never without tool is my Hori Hori knife. So I use it much as you would a trowel, but you can see it's quite sharp edges, sharp point. So useful when you're dealing with really compact clay. Lovely comfortable grip on the handle. So I'm very fortunate that my lovely friend Jan bought me my Felcos, and my lovely friend Jackie bought me my Hori Hori knife. I think it's no coincidence, I'm just going to rub the back to see if I can show you the name. I think it's no coincidence that they are both professional gardeners. I think if you ever want advice about tools, speak to a professional gardener, because they're using their tools, you know, pretty much every single day of the year. It says Nisaku on the back. I don't know if that will pick up. Let me see, Nisaku, made in Japan. Again, fantastically expensive. I think they're about £30 to £35. I think it's going to last me a lifetime. Now with both the Hori Hori knife, that's H-O-R-I, twice, and the Secateurs, you do see fakes for sale. So if you see one of these for £10, it's not an original, and the chances are that the blade, the steel of the blade is just not up to par. And if you look at this one, can you see how far the blade, the hilt of the blade goes into the handle, riveted in. So it's really strong. Fantastic. It's funny, when I first got this, I didn't use it for about a year because I'm a bit scared of sharp things, of pointing. I've got this weird phobia about sharp stuff. And then I can't remember why, but there's one day I had to use it. Maybe I'd lent my trowel to someone else. I hadn't got it back, so I had to use it. And honestly, I'm not exaggerating now when I say I don't think there's a day in the garden when this is not either in my hand or right by my side. It's fantastic. So I've got no space. Then other hand tools. Oh, it's filthy. I need to have a good cleaning session. I've got this little hand, well, you can see it's 3 prongs. It's like a little like scratchy hand, almost like a little miniature rake. I don't use it a huge amount, but I use it for a couple of things. One, if I'm just scattering seeds in, like flower seeds, or when I was doing the lentils in those days, just scatter them on the surface of the soil and sort of scritch them in with this. Great. And the other thing is, if it's a combination of two things, either we've had loads and loads of really pelting rain, if I've got areas of the garden which I haven't been able to mulch, beds in the garden that I haven't been able to mulch, or conversely, if we've been really, really baking and I haven't been able to get any mulch. What I find with this, so in other words, the surface of the soil gets really compact. It's especially true if we're in drought. Let's say I see on the forecast that we are due some rain. Quite often what I'll do with this, just kind of quickly, ad hoc, bit gentle, whatever, is just go through all my beds and give them a quick little bit of a scritchy scratch, just to break the surface of the soil open a little bit. I mean, you can see they're only, what, 1.5 inches deep, and I never go in that deep, so maybe only in the top sort of inch or so of soil, just to break up the surface a bit, so that when we do get rain, it's got a chance of going in rather than landing on that compact surface and just running off. So, useful little tool. If I didn't have it, I wouldn't lose any sleep. I don't think it's an essential bit of my kit. I'll be talking about essentials at some point. So, useful. I don't know where it came from, I don't know how I ended up with it, did I buy it myself? Can't remember. If I had to do without, I would, but I've got it and it's useful. I also have, everything needs a clean, my little dibber. So for example, when I'm doing my garlic, I always plant my garlic about 2 inches below the surface of the soil. Because I don't want to just ram it in and damage that kind of where the little root plate at the bottom is, I always dib a hole for it. You can buy all sorts of dibbers, all sorts of expenses. This is the end of a tent peg. Let me show you. Let me get this out of the top. Oh, anyway, look, I've unscrewed it a bit. That's a knob from a drawer, just screwed into the top, just so that it's a bit more comfy in my hand to dip my holes. No cost. I think the thing with gardening is you can spend as much or as little as you want. What I would say is things like the Secateurs and the Hori Hori knife, they are worth the expense, but most other things can be cobbled together for nothing. My straight line markers, again, cost absolutely nothing. Just 2 old bits of broken bamboo, string tied off here, wound onto the rest of it. So they sit nice and tidily and neatly in my pot until I need them, and then unroll. So they unroll to about 3 and a bit meters. Again, not essential. It just, I find it just helps when I'm sewing, because I do sew quite closely. I'm very greedy with my space. It just helps to make sure that I haven't gone too greedy, but also once they're out in the beds and I can get ready to sew, I can see, have I maximised that space? Can I move one of these over ever so slightly and maybe get one more row in? So I find it really useful. Free, no cost. Well, the cost of a bit of string. Right, I'm going to look at my list because I don't have everything to hand to visually remind me. Yes, now on to, I don't want to disturb sleeping cats. Pest prevention, nets, tunnels, etc. So I've got these ones here because they're not in use at the moment. These are my shade tunnels. So you can see these are the ones. See, this whole section, that's what goes into the soil, hoop across the top of the crops, and they're netted. So the nets are really useful for keeping off cabbage white butterflies, for example. Some people have them to keep pigeons off. I always put nets on a freshly prepared bed to keep foxes and cats off so they don't use it as a latrine. I think they're quite useful. Also, if I've just planted out some really small seedlings, like when my brassicas first go out, cover them so that it's a bit of a barrier against, say, foxes or cats crashing through the beds and snapping the plants. So I've got the shade ones, which are green, and then I've got the white-ish ones, which are Enviromesh. So Enviromesh is, I can't show you any because they're all out there. It's another kind of net. It's a very, very, very fine mesh. Light can get through, water can get through, but butterflies can't get through. And it's supposed to be fine enough to prevent things like carrot root fly, allium leaf miner, all these pests that can get to our crops, to keep them out too. So for the most part, I will use the white, clear Enviromesh tunnels. But the shade netting, I'm just going to put this down again, trying not to disturb a cat. Oh, big yawn from little man. The shade nets I find particularly useful when I've brought seedlings on at home. Then are you going to come and sit on my lap? You never come and sit on my lap. When I've brought seedlings on at home, then they come down to the allotment for a bit of hardening off in the cold frame, and then they get planted out. At that stage, it's usually the beginning of summer, sort of say around June time, that it can be really quite bright and hot on the days when that happens. So I like to, having transplanted them into the garden, give them all a really good drink. I like to then put the shade nets on them for 2 or 3 days. I just feel it hopefully helps them with dealing with that transplant shock, that they're suddenly in this fierce sunshine, fierce heat. Put the shade nets on just while they settle down, start to get their roots out, stop too much of that watering that I've done from evaporating. Really useful for that. So if I had to only have one kind of net, also just to say, they're the ones that come on the actual hoops. It's kind of like pre-formed. I always have large sheets of Enviromesh that are, I think they're probably 2 or 2.5 meters wide by 4 meters long, I think. They're the ones that you've seen over my brassicas. They're the ones that I have to make my own hoops for. And in that instance, I just use that water piping, the blue water piping that you've seen in the garden. So if I could only have one type of netting here, I would go for Enviromesh over the shade nets, because I really don't want to shade my plants for too long. So yeah, if I could only have one, I'd go for the Enviromesh, the kind of white clear stuff. And if I had to choose between the ones that have got the hoops ready made or the big sheets that I have to make hoops for, I would probably go for the big sheets that aren't ready hooped. A, it works out much cheaper, and B, they're just a bit more adaptable. I can have them much bigger. Of course, it does mean that you have to do something by way of creating hoops yourself, but it's so easy to pick up, pardon me, water piping, that sort of stuff, just look in skips. And and even if you had to buy it, it's going to last a really, really long time, so it's a good investment. So yeah, I'd rather have the loose big sheet than the hoop stuff. But the pre-hoop stuff is so handy and quick. I mean, you've seen when I finished a session and I just go boom, 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 cover my crops, done. Really quick and easy. Can you hear him purring away? Oh, and also I should mention there is one more type of cover I've got. I can't get to it. Rusty's on top of it sleeping. Is, of course, Fleece. So Fleece, for anyone who hasn't used it, it's more like, it's less see-through. It sort of looks like a fabric almost like a sort of very fine felt. And we use it in the winter to just give a bit of protection against, you know, temperatures going really, really, really low. I rarely use my fleece. It is handy to have that. So and as an example of when and how I do use it, if we're at the end of May, beginning of June, we should be past frost at that stage in the year. But sometimes when I plant out really tender things such as squash, if we suddenly get a weather warning where they say the nighttime temps are going to dip down to 5 or 6, yeah, it's not a frost. However, that's really quite low for such tender plants which have been brought on at home, they've been in the cold frame, they've been really nice and warm and cosy. So that's an example of where I'd whip out the fleece, get them covered for the evening. And if that's going to go on for sort of 2, 3, 4 evenings, just leave it in place until the temperatures come back up, say above 10 or 11 degrees. Could I live without fleece in the garden? You know what, here I probably could. I don't want to just cast myself now that we're going to have a really, really cold winter, but generally our winters here in London, and for the things that I grow, they should all be absolutely fine. But I know, for instance, Paul is going to be growing some lettuces over winter, so he will fleece those. He'll give them a fleece tunnel, just that little tiny bit of protection. Let's check the list, check it twice. What I didn't show you in my hand, of course, string. We all need string, don't we? I mean, I use it everywhere in the garden, whether it's tying structures together like bean poles, whether it's tying plants to the bean poles, whether it's hanging things, you know, in this shed. String, string, string. I try to use either hemp or organic hemp, organic jute, sometimes organic cotton. I try to use organic string, because then at the end of the season, as I'm cutting everything down, when those bits of string fall into the soil, they're just going to add to the compost. I don't worry about having to pick them up and, you know, get them thrown away. They can just rot in the soil. So again, you know, you can buy cheap string, of course you can. If you want to go with the organic stuff, it is a bit more expensive. So again, it's one of those things, you know, perhaps one of your family members wants to get you a stocking filler, you know, they want to spend a £5 on you, and rather than spending £1 on some string, £5 on some organic string. Can't live without string in the garden. And scissors, of course, for cutting it. Need to sharpen my scissors. You know, this may all seem really obvious, but when you're starting to kit your shed out, in the beginning, as happened to me, I'd be down here doing something and I'd think, oh, I wish I had such and such in the shed. And of course, I can bring my scissors from home, use them in the garden and take them home. But it gets to the stage where I'm bringing stuff from home, taking it all, you know, all. So in the end, what I've done with a lot of things, those kind of things that I would use at home as well as in the shed, just buy a second one of each. Makes my life more simple. Talking of which, another really bit of essential kit. Now, it doesn't get used often. Well, not at the moment, because I haven't really had any projects on the go. Excuse me. I've got the very last dregs of this cold. It just won't go. Actually, before that, I meant to say about this. When we were talking about nets and hoops and etc., etc., so for the free floating, the big sheet of Enviromesh that I flip over the top of the water pipes, for holding the edges down, of course, bricks, planks of wood, whatever to hold it down. But these are really great. So you see, can the camera focus on that? So let's say my tunnel is here and this is at soil level. So I just roll up the excess net. This comes over the top and goes boom, and sort of locks it down to the soil. So you can see it's designed as a spike to go into the soil. Really useful. I don't know how much these are. I've managed, all the ones I've got, I've managed to scrounge when other people are chucking them away. I say, oh, yes, please. dead useful. They're just, especially if you're a neat freak, but never mind the neat freak, because my little dirt paths between the beds are really quite narrow. If I've got a load of enviromesh left over and bricks on top, it's just making the path narrower and narrower and narrower and giving me potential trip hazards. So for me, this is great to get it really tucked down, out of the way, secure, no trip hazard, well, less potential for trip hazard. So again, it's one of those things where, you know, if someone wants to, you know, stocking filler or a secret Santa, I know it's supposed to be secret, but sometimes in some workplaces for secret Santas, you know, there's a £5 top spend, but some people put a list up with their name and the thing that they would like Santa to bring them. So that would be a great idea, because I can't imagine, I don't know how many come in a pack, maybe there's 10 in a pack, maybe it's a £5 for a pack. Great stocking filler. Obviously none of this is a paid promotion. I ain't getting nothing for this. No, Santa is not paying me on the side. I wish. I'm being a proper little elf today, aren't I? A little bit of elf and safety. Right. Eek. I realise this video is quite wordy, chock full of info. I mean, I hope it's useful info. So because of that, I'm actually going to split it into two. So this is the end of part 1. So what was originally going to be 2 videos is now going to probably be 3 videos. So this is the end of part 1, and then I'll catch up with you all tomorrow for part 2. Yeah, we'll take it from there. So for now, cheerio.